Recording is in progress.
In progress.
Welcome to the real filthy truth. We are joined with my good friend Curtis out in the woods. Where are you at, bro?
I'm in the Green River, like the Green River Killer.
Yes.
Yeah, in Washington State.
He's dead though, right? That dude's dead, right?
I'm pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
It's really peaceful out here now.
That's good, bro. So, man, we're going to talk about Antifa. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a heavy topic, but also
It's
kind of not heavy. I feel like they're just a bunch of bratty kids that are trying to get super violent, and they do every once in a while, but they're kind of wimps, right? So it's a heavy topic, but also it's like, they're just skinny little brats. Like you can just shove them down, it's not that big of a deal.
Sure.
But they get into a big mob and then it gets scary.
Then
so
it's
kind of
serious,
scary.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you did a little research, what were you, anything were you surprised about, or kind of what caught your attention when you were looking at your research on it?
Well, apparently they mostly consider themselves anarchists, communists, and socialists.
Yeah.
And
those are all
I don't know what I
different.
read. It's like they started in Germany in the
before
the 30s or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that maybe back then the group, obviously, I doubt if that group would be the same as what we have today, right? I mean, there's no way that they have a different mentality, a different thinking. So things change over time,
Okay, things change over time in a sense, but I mean, like, I hate to go here, but like,
sure.
What about like a Nazi? Is a Nazi today, is it different than a Nazi in the past? Yeah, probably, but not really.
Okay, so that's a good, I don't want to get too off the sidetrack, but let me just give you an example. So if you look at the Ku Klux Klan or kind of like the remnants of that group, their strategies now is way different than it was back then. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
So right? I mean, like they're not going to run around anymore with the crosses, with the light the cross on fire. I mean, it's a good strategy for them to come out as more of a like Christian, wholesome family. We just want everyone to get along. They're still promoting similar things, but they've gotten KKK? Better. What?
It's the warm and fuzzy KKK.
Yes. I think that you listen. If you're a group, we're just talking about. It doesn't matter which group it is. Like you got to change your messaging so that you can get people to like you and get you on their side. They're trying to get more people. They're trying to influence people. So yeah, I do think things change over time. So I don't know this Antifa group back then. I don't know what was different about them than now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, bro. Well, I thought I wanted to read you a couple things and to get your opinion on it. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. Sure.
Okay. So you remember that thing about the Rittenhouse, the recent, have you heard about that at all?
Yeah, I watched, I didn't really watch the trial, but I saw the verdict.
Okay.
I know a little bit about, I saw the original videos of the incident. Yeah.
Okay. So out of the Washington Examiner, there's one person said Rittenhouse shouldn't be demonized while many on the left celebrate those of BLM and Antifa as freedom fighters. Democrats weaponize the law and public opinion against those that run counter to their ideologies. They condemn Rittenhouse as a vigilante, but they love vigilantism, I can't even say that word, when they are BLM or Antifa members. What do you think of that? Is there some truth to that or no?
Okay, well, it's weird you're bringing up Rittenhouse. I mean, does that have to do with Antifa? I guess it does. Like some of those guys were related somehow to Antifa. And there was BLM there, so I'm assuming there was Antifa there too.
Well, But but I think what his point is he's trying to say that he's comparing the two, and one is like, Antifa does these violent things, and it's sort of like the Democrats sort of step away and don't say much about it. It's sort of like that's okay, but then when he does it, you don't want to demonize him. I think I totally get his point. That's all. I see where he's coming from.
Yeah, and even more so, like you're saying, like when Rittenhouse, you're saying the Antifa and BLM, they're kind of vigilantes. They're going out there causing havoc. They were rioting. They weren't just protesting.
Right.
And you're saying Rittenhouse was kind of doing the same thing, but he wasn't. He was reacting to, I mean, at least as far as I know, he was reacting to the level of violence and destruction that was going on in his hometown.
Right.
So to say he's a vigilante, it's really more like he wasn't a vigilante. It's like they were causing havoc, and he was there thinking he could help protect from destruction and violence.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So we'll read one other quote, which is from this guy named Seth Jones. So he says, Trump frequently accuses Antifa of inciting violence. And yet, according to Insider, right-wing extremists have killed 329 victims in the last 25 years, while Antifa members haven't killed any. The most significant domestic terrorism threat comes from white supremacist anti-government militias and a handful of individuals associated with, I love this word, by the way, Boogaloo, the Boogaloo movement, that are attempting to create a civil war in the United States. So what do you think of that quote? Do you agree or no? And sounds like bullshit or what?
Well, yeah, it sounds like bullshit. Read that first part again.
The very first part?
Yeah.
Okay, I said, Trump frequently accuses the Antifa of inciting violence. And yet, according to Insider, right-wing extremists have killed 329 victims in the last 25 years, while Antifa members haven't killed any. Actually, let me make a point about something. I'm reading that quote not saying, oh, it's right or wrong or it's correct. Actually, I think they have killed at least one person. So,
I tried to look up. Yeah, I tried to look up real quick to see like how many they've killed, and it's hard to figure that out. I mean,
yeah,
in the riots that we've had in the last few years, which was a conglomeration of like BLM and Antifa, a few dozen people have been killed in those actions, and tons more have been injured. So I think saying Antifa only killed one person,
seems a little bit off. Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I know there was a guy in Portland that I think the Antifa guy shot.
Right. But let's just say this. Let's just say that this person was correct. Even so, if 329 victims, I mean, it's still sad, 329 people dying.
Well,
but that's 25 years. That's not like a huge number anyway. I mean, it's sad, but I mean, it's like, I'm sure more people die from other things. You know what I mean?
Sure. But I mean, obviously we'd say that, the right-wing extremism is also bad.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, it really doesn't matter how many people are killed. It's like, if you're killing people or hurting people or burning things down, for me, like that's the line. So it's like, the right-wing extremists killed a certain number in 25 years. That needs to be stopped. If Antifa didn't kill anybody, all they did was just burn shit down and scare people and chase people in the streets, that needs to be stopped too.
Right.
Even if they didn't kill anybody, they want to claim they didn't kill anybody.
Right. So here's something where I honestly, I feel a little conflicted, even just saying this, but I think it's really important. So, I don't agree with their tactics in a lot of ways. I agree with you that I think violence, I don't know that it solves many issues, right? I mean, I think if you want people to be on your side, being violent doesn't make you look very good. So I kind of see Antifa as like a spark, like they're strongly against something, and so then they they just act out. We'll get into that a little bit, their tactics and stuff. But when I look at all the progress in the United States, such as, like we ended slavery, allowed women to vote, stopping the Vietnam War, gay people getting married, all these different things, none of that stuff happened by just magically, we just all hung out and we'll just be like, hey, let's have change. You know what I mean? Like it just magically happened. And so I look back at those things. I don't think those things happened just because people were super violent. It was a mix of lots of different things going on. But usually there's always like a spark of like people are really mad at something. And then it creates a force. And then it's like a push, people need to be pushed, And what's weird is sometimes things get pushed and then it can go in a direction you're not sure which way it will go. It can go in not necessarily the direction that you thought of, which I think could happen with Antifa. I think that maybe even though they're pushing really hard, we might go in a different direction.
Okay.
I want to get your take on that. Was that?
Yeah, why then? But then why would they? I mean, they're planning out these tactics. They're bringing weapons. They bring things to throw. They have this saying called "be water."
Okay.
So it's a tactic where they all dress the same, so you can't identify each other or other people. And that's specifically, I don't see any other reason for being water than so this person over here can commit a crime and usually like some sort of violence or destruction and then hide back in the crowd. So it seems to me like they're focused on using violence and destruction as their main source. It's terrorism.
But remember though, what I'm trying to get at is I'm not trying to say whether their tactics are good or bad or useful or like is going to work out. I guess what I'm trying to say is if we look back at other movements that have happened, I don't think it's as straightforward as saying, oh, if we're just nonviolent, we'll have change. Or if we're just violent, we'll have change. I think it's a combination of the two. But most of these movements, when they happened, there had to have been some kind of spark, some sort of outrage that happened. But usually I always think of it like sometimes you can win the battle and lose the war, which means I feel like when Antifa does a protest, they might think, oh, they did a really good job. Like they ended, for instance, like that guy, what's his name? No, I can't think of his first name. But
Andy, no.
Andy, no, thanks. It's like they think if they stop him from speaking, that they did it, they won. You know what I mean? But the thing is that it's like sometimes it has a reverse effect. Like in one way, by stopping him to speak, people get mad that he couldn't speak, and then it sort of like gets more people interested. Wait a second, you're stopping me from talking, so I want to join with this guy. You know what I mean? Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying? I'm not so much talking about just the tactics. I'm just saying, but overall though, we get a combination of both things that are violent and nonviolent together. And that's usually what happens. I wish things just changed by, people writing their senators or something. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, in this country, we can protest, which I think usually that can kind of be enough. If you get enough people to protest peacefully, then you can get your message across and it will reach more people if it's a legitimate message.
Yeah.
But once you throw in these, or you have people in your group that are committing violent, destructive actions, and it's like you said, it's like it makes people turn away from that. It makes people not want to really even listen to what they're saying.
Yeah. So, okay. So can you tell me like, what would be the opposite of Antifa? Cause I've been thinking about this, like, is there any group that you would say is the direct opposite of Antifa?
Oh, well,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like we're talking about the far right, like killing a certain number of people, and that's probably true. I mean, there's probably some truth to that in some way, right? Like, I mean, if you say the KKK far right or neo-Nazis is that far right?
It's a trick question because I bet you my answer is going to be different than yours. But let's just see what you come up with. what would you say is the opposite of Antifa? Right off the top of your head.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say the first thing I thought of was Proud Boys, but I don't think that's the right answer. I think they're the response to Antifa.
Okay.
But I don't really think they're the opposite.
Yeah, I hear you. It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
well, here's something weird. What about this? Have you ever thought maybe that the Proud Boys, I mean, of course, they're a different group, but in a lot of ways, I feel like they're a lot alike. If people want to immediately say, oh, those are opposites, I don't think they are. Because if you think about the Proud Boys, they have their worldview. And it's different than Antifa, but they're trying to get their message out, right? That whatever it is that they believe in, and maybe they even if they have maybe they're a little bit racist or whatever, but usually there's a reason for why they believe the way they do, right?
You're so forgiving. Like maybe they're a little bit racist or whatever, but my experience, the Proud Boys that I've run into, I haven't found them to be racist. But
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they are.
But see that even if you say that, I agree with you. Like what I'm saying is that when they do like a prayer breakfast or something, like they do some rally, then
they exclude certain races. And
no, I wasn't going to say that. No, I was just going to say basically that I don't think it always ends in mayhem. Like in other words, they just getting their point of view out. You and I can disagree with what they have to say, but then at the same time, it's like, this is where Antifa and those guys really differ, is that I think their violence happens when they're not at the rally, actually. It's when they're kind of by themselves and they go to some town, then you hear about incidences where they beat somebody up and they commit violence. So it's actually quite opposite. It's almost like when they do their rallies, they're actually really probably okay. Like, I don't think there's any big issue. The statistics show that, right? That yes, it's true that they between those two groups, yes, they fight because they're both there fighting amongst each other. But if Antifa doesn't show up and they do their thing, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that they usually do very much other than just say some stuff,
Yeah. No. What would the Proud Boys do? They're going to like smash windows and like
threaten
people in
the
the
thing.
streets.
That's the weird part, is that when they do their rally, they tend not to be violent, but their violence happens when they're not doing the rally. You know what I mean? They tend to do things when the eyes of the media is not on them.
I'm not
which
sure
is very opposite to Antifa.
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, if violence is in front of the camera or behind the camera, it would be wrong. So,
right. But I'm just saying, when they have their protests, as long as Antifa doesn't show up, I think that they've learned over the years that they want people to follow them. They want to have influence. I think it doesn't make sense for them to try to be violent because they want people on their side. They want to point out, hey, Antifa's bad, we're good. Right. So I think that they've learned over of course, Proud Boys is a fairly new organization, but I think that that's a smart tactic. Like, if you want people on your side, it's smart to be not violent.
Now you're saying it's a tactic, like it's a choice, but I think that's what Proud Boys is they're a non-violent group. They're against violence.
Okay. But not when we look at statistically though. So that's my point, is that when we go into, like, as far as violence against other people, other races and stuff, we'll see that they have committed some. I mean, it's just a fact. They have committed some crimes. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm pointing out that I don't see those two groups necessarily as being opposite. Most people think of it that way, but I don't agree. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean,
I think they're similar to each other.
I can't think of any crimes or any I can't think of any violence that the Proud Boys have committed. I'm sure there must be some, but I don't know of any. It sounds like you're like, oh, the statistics show that the Proud Boys are a violent, racist group.
I'll have to bring that up later. I can show you that sometime on this podcast. So we'll go over that.
You know what's
But that
kind of
doesn't,
interesting is
it still doesn't matter because, like I said, the amount of, we kind of talked about this earlier, the amount of violence, even if they have done it, it's very similar to the Antifa. They're not, again, 329 out of 25 years, if that's really true, that's not very high of a number. You know what I mean?
yeah, but I still wouldn't want to join any of those groups.
I know, of course.
Like,
I agree. But remember, the original question was, what's the opposite of Antifa? And so to me,
Yeah.
what the opposite of Antifa would be is like kind of like a, I don't know, like a Mormon group, like something where it's like all peaceful. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, we don't, we're all about
Yeah.
peace and love, bro. And
tolerant.
yes, yeah. See, that is what I feel like is the opposite of Antifa. Any group it could be religious, it could just be like, or they kind of go along with the system and they're like, oh, well, if you don't like it, just write your congressman. You know what I mean? Like just vote Democrat or Republican, or just, you know what I mean? Like we should all get along. I think that's the opposite of Antifa.
A peace, you're saying just someone that's peaceful and accepting.
Yes, yeah. That's what I think is opposite.
Yeah, but see, Antifa, I mean, their name means anti-fascist, right? So
right.
It sounds like they're trying to label themselves just like what you're saying. They're trying to say, oh, we're against fascism. We're against hatred of races and genders and sexes, but they're not.
I agree.
They're like, kill Andy, no. And he's Asian and he's gay.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't mean they should give him a pass. Like they could still disagree with him, but they shouldn't be sending out the message, that he should be killed or he should lose his job or something like that.
Look, I totally agree with you because they say that they're against fascism, but if you stop someone from speaking, then you're kind of being fascist, right? It's like, which is it? Do you want freedom? Or do you want people to have the freedom of speech or not? And so to me, I think people should be free to speak. But let's just go over real fast what supposedly Antifa is.
It's a domestic terror organization.
Right. That's one possibility, right? So they're a left-wing, anti-fascist, anti-racist group. They supposedly use nonviolent and violent direct action. Let's see. They protest neo-Nazis, white supremacists. We kind of get that. And then, of course, as far as
wait a second. Sorry, I've never seen them protest white supremacists or neo-Nazis. I've never seen them protest those groups. Maybe they do protest those groups. I've never seen them protest those groups.
Don't they go when those groups are there and then they protest?
I've never seen it. They call those groups those names. They'll say
no, but what I'm saying is when you see Antifa, usually there's a couple things that can happen. I mean, this is, I think, fairly factual. Like there's a couple ways that you'll see Antifa. One is like if there's a prayer breakfast thing or like a Proud Boy event.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with fascists or Nazis?
What's that?
Or what does that have to do with fascists or Nazis or racists?
Well, they see the Proud Boys as being fascist.
But they're not.
Well, that's your opinion. I mean, other people think they are. So I don't know. You know what I mean? It's they see them as being fascist. So to them, they're stopping fascism. See, we get down to this whole worldview where, it isn't about me saying, oh, you're wrong or you're right or whatever. It's just like we all have our own point of view. So if you don't think Proud Boys are fascists and someone else doesn't think so, then we would say that they're not really protesting fascism. But if they really are fascists, then we're still running into a problem because if we don't allow them to speak, then they're being fascist for not even allowing them to talk. So it doesn't even matter whether you consider them fascists or not. The fact that they're not allowing them or they're deplatforming them, where they kind of intimidate from the event even happening. They try to do that too. What do you? Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's see. We can go over the background. I don't want to go too much into the background of Antifa, but I think you said it. they used to be the Anti-Racist Action. Did you read that? Yeah. It kind of feels like it really kind of got going maybe in the early 80s or something, with the punk bands.
But now in this country, we saw, and then the Proud Boys were created too around the same time. Is like when Trump came into office, then now we see these anti-fascist people in these large groups,
right?
In big actions. It's almost like Trump is their leader.
Yeah, in a way, like Trump kind of made
created
it so.
Them.
What's that?
Like Trump created them, and they would hate to hear that. I feel like
that
I want to talk about some of the
go ahead.
tactics that they use.
Okay.
Sure, well, because these are fascist tactics, and I mean, I guess we could look into the Proud Boys and see if they are fascist or not, but I would say the Proud Boys are actually anti-fascist, and Antifa is actually fascist. Antifa uses tactics like they have this thing they say, this is food for my family, and they'll hold a can of food, right?
Okay.
Like a piece, like I don't know, cranberry sauce, right, for Thanksgiving. They're like, oh, this is food for my family. I just have food for my family. There's like a video of some guy on CNN getting interviewed at a riot. And he's like, oh, I just have. The lady's like, what do you have that can of food for? And he's like, oh, I just have this can of food to feed my family.
Right.
And
he uses a weapon.
Yeah, it's a fucking weapon.
Right.
So,
well, there's no denying that there definitely have been very, very violent. They can use sticks and clubs.
Yep.
They will have Molotov cocktails. All those things. That's true. They've done all those things, but I also think there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that they do as well, which I think you were going to talk about the doxing, which I find interesting. And, they kind of track these groups and what they do. And, I guess there's a little bit of a problem. If you don't see these right-wing groups as being fascists, then I don't know what to say, because it's like, there's definitely I don't think that one group is better than the other. I guess that's where I stand,
There are fascist right-wing groups.
Okay. Yeah. But you don't think Proud Boys would be one of those groups?
Based on the information I have, no. But I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong.
I could be wrong too. So
yeah, I think you are. No, I don't.
It's okay.
I don't have enough information to say for sure that they're not fascist. Okay. But from everything I've seen, it seems to me that Antifa is definitely fascist. Got it. And I don't have any information to show that Proud Boys is fascist. Yeah.
Okay.
Think about it like this. If we're saying, it sounds like we're agreeing Antifa is fascist.
Yeah.
Then why would the Proud Boys be against Antifa if the Proud Boys are also fascist? The Proud Boys are free. They're like freedom, free speech, equality, things that Antifa is not.
Well, like I said before, it's what I feel like the main difference is that when a Proud Boy has a rally, think of the rally as like their moment to speak, to say what they think. And when they talk, they're pretty, they're not going to come across as being a right-wing group at all. I think that they've gotten smart. I think that they're going to appeal to people in a certain way to get people on their side. They're going to point out that Antifa is bad and that kind of stuff, or that you should vote for Trump, kind of like those type of things. But when they commit the violence, it's not at the rally unless Antifa's there. But they will, they have, like, for instance, saying the Chinese, like if they see a Chinese person and they'll say, oh, you bring in the coronavirus, it's because of you. And then they've attacked Chinese people. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I do not think that's the case.
No, that could be. It is. They've done it. Okay. They've done it. Okay. They've done those things. So again, I don't want to get into this thing of like comparing one to the other. I'm actually saying they're quite similar to each other. But the big difference is when they do the rallies, they're a lot more peaceful, and they kind of believe a little bit more into freedom of speech. But it's just that when Antifa shows up, then it's like all hell breaks loose, right? They all just start fighting each other, is what I'm saying.
They do fight then. That's true. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I'm going to get your opinion on a couple more things I was going to ask you about. Okay, so I want to read a couple things off. I found this on Quora, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So tell me what you think of this. Different opinions. Okay, so one person said, if you see an Antifa member that vandalizes a store or supermarket or whatever, that person is not Antifa. By their own philosophy, those who commit acts of vandalism are just taking advantage of the movement to do whatever they want.
Who said that? Who said that?
It was just someone on Quora.
Someone that's in Antifa.
No. Like, I don't know who they're from. It doesn't matter. Quora is, it's like a social media thing,
Yeah.
Supposedly, an opinion.
Supposedly Antifa is like, there's no leader.
Right.
They're not really. There's not really a group.
Okay.
Of it's not an organization. It's not really tightly knit or whatever. But I mean, right. I think that's got to be false, because we see them come together in these big actions, and they're prepared.
Right, so there has to be some kind of organization.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think there's a little bit of truth and a little bit of falsehood to that. I think maybe that they aren't like, there's like one dude that runs Antifa, but I do think that they put out stuff, and then like all these little groups, they do organize, and they kind of, get together. They have to coordinate somewhat, right? Otherwise, how do they get to do anything? You know what I mean? So I think you and I are on the same page on that.
Yeah, they're definitely planning things out. I mean, if you think about, like, if you see a right-wing group, like a free speech group, which is weird that that's right-wing now to be free speech.
No, it shouldn't be. No, you're right. See, I am 100% with you on that. I feel like if you're going to stop free speech, then you're not helping yourself. Like, you're not making your point very well heard.
Yeah.
Because if you should allow people to speak.
Free speech, then you should stop talking, right?
Yeah, unless of course you're inciting violence, right? Unless the only time where I feel like free speech should be limited is when you're saying something that's causing a riot, or something like that, or what do they call it, where you're criticizing someone, their character. Sometimes that's a little bit gray area, it's depending on what you're saying. So
sure, there might be certain minimal limitations.
Okay, so now I want to read you this other one, which I thought was really good too, really interesting. This is by far, I think, fascinating. Okay, this person on Quora said, Antifa is about destroying logic with dualism, destroying reason with extremism, but mostly increasing what they claim to be against through deception. They use totalitarianism as an excuse to fight fascism. They use hatred as an excuse to increase acceptance. They use judgment as an excuse to increase tolerance. They wrap their dualism in a package of ego and superiority to infect the weak-minded and the narcissists in order to bend them to their will.
Yeah. They're really into brainwashing people and controlling other people that aren't aware of what they're getting into. They think they're getting into something good, and then they're hooked up with this, a domestic terror organization.
We're talking about the future of Antifa. So go ahead and give me your take. I'll take my take.
Well, the future of Antifa is really interesting. I think they need an enemy. They need a boogeyman, right? To get more people to join their group and to go to these actions. And in Portland, the Antifa is pretty strong, and there's places in Seattle and things like that where Antifa is pretty strong. But they need a boogeyman, and if the last president runs again coming up in a few years, then they're going to get their boogeyman. So I think that's the future of Antifa. You're going to see Antifa kind of petering out now. I feel like people are like becoming more aware. They're like, we like the message of Black Lives Matter, but we don't stand with that group. And yes, we're against fascism, but we don't stand with Antifa because we're seeing that they are kind of violent and stuff like that. But then if Trump runs again, then their membership and their activity could go up, and we'll see them out a lot more.
And that's how I feel too. I mean, I have not much to add to that.
And you know what the truth is, like, they should, if they hate Trump, or they hate whatever, like you said, if they're fascist, they have just as much right to speak as anybody else.
Okay.
but speak, not threaten people or cause violence or destruction. Like that's
Right.
crossing the line. I think that's the last words for me is like, I
All
think
right. That sounds good.
Antifa should be allowed to, I mean, obviously they should be allowed to speak and they should be able to have
Yeah.
rallies and protest and things
Right.
like that. So we know what's out there. And,
Sure.
but once they cross that line and once people in their group or at their actions cross that line of violence or destruction or threatening people, then they're crossing that line and they have to stop right then and there. And
Yeah.
people shouldn't stand with that. You know, I would
I
stand with
agree.
Antifa in the sense of like, I would defend their right to speak and march and protest.
Sure.
But I would not, we should fight them if they're dangerous.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Okay. I think you made a lot of good points. So I'll give you my little take on it. I guess, I feel like, so here's where I think people get Antifa wrong. I think this is the area where I think when someone smears Antifa with everybody else and say, oh, they're all left, and Democrats, Biden, it's run by Soros. Like, I think when we get into conspiracy territory, then I kind of glaze over and go, man, you guys don't have a good point. But when you start talking about the things that they have done, the violence, the doxing, to me, I feel like that's an area where maybe you can do that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's okay to embarrass someone who's done something. I think that's probably okay, but it might cross a line. I don't know. It depends on the law. But I really agree with you that I think as time goes, you're going to see like the Black Lives Matter movement kind of pushing themselves away from Antifa. Like, no, we're not those guys. You know what I mean? Because I don't think that it doesn't do them any good when they're labeled as being just this violent group. I don't think they're going to want to be with them. But I think the people on the right are going to want to say, no, they're all that, right? Let's just lump them all together. So I think that as time goes, we're going to see that more and more. But I don't think this country is going to go in a left-wing direction. I think you're going to see more push for conservative values, which I don't think conservative is bad or good. It just is. I just see it as like that's the direction that we're going in. I don't think, for instance, that Biden's going to get back in, especially with, that's a whole nother discussion, right? The pandemic and all that and what's happening with that. But I just think overall it's, who knows how Antifa will affect things, but I just don't think that, they're helping themselves. But we'll see, only the future can tell, right? We'll see what happens, So I think that concludes my take. Oh man.
All right. Well, I think that's a great first episode for the Filthy
Really?
Truth.
You think I did all right?
Yeah. I think as long
was
as
I fairity? Was I okay?
I just want to tell people that are watching and listening right now to like and subscribe.
Yes, like and subscribe. That's it. And the thing is, I want to make one last point, which is, I think everyone has their own point of view about things. And what I want to do with this podcast is to expand people's truths to where maybe they see things in a new perspective. And that what we're doing is we're actually like trying to find what is truth and, what is really going on, and how can we make this world a better place? That's what I'm all about. You know what I mean? So